All right, so this video is going to be about the American education system as it compares to the European education system, Chinese education system, Japanese education system, and a lot of countries in Africa. In particular, as it relates to language. So, math is pretty much the only universal language. Otherwise, as you know, there are tons of different languages across the world. Now, here in the US, we mainly focus on English. And the reason why I want to make this video is because the education system via Donald Trump has changed already. And a lot of people that support him are saying that Americans should only speak English. Only English. Now, I want to explain why that is a totally bad idea. Now, before all this, it was pretty much normal for schools to lean toward a more progressive approach. And for the most part, students that were really successful would know at least one other language besides English by the time they graduated high school or college. So I studied Spanish. Many people in the school I went to had a choice between Spanish and Latin. And then as they got into high school, they would have other choices like speaking French or Mandarin Chinese, learning those languages. Um, the problem is that where I'm from, down in South Carolina, people were comfortable only speaking two languages. Now, if you go to a place like Europe, it's common for people to speak three, four, maybe even five languages, just as a comparison. And that's really important because when you travel around the world, English and Chinese are two of the most powerful languages on the planet right now. And Spanish, and Spanish. I forgot about that. But there are benefits to a variety of other languages. For instance, like if you know French, let's say you wanted to get involved in the United Nations, both English and French are the major languages to get involved in those. At the same time, on the African continent, before colonization, many countries spoke a variety of different dialects. If you go to a country like Ethiopia, they speak between 20 and 30 different languages just in that one country, which is a small, it's not, it's a landmass. I'd say half the size or maybe even a third of the size of the United States. People are speaking 20 to 30 different languages in just that amount of space. So I was a business student and wanted to get involved in business, not just in the US, but abroad. And I started looking at places outside of the US. Um, Upon me going to my trip to California, I found that a lot of entrepreneurs were branching out to places like Japan, places like China, Southeast Asia, Singapore, India, places like that. The problem is when you go to these places, yes, some of these countries do speak English, but it's better if you communicate in their language. That way you can understand them and you can read and write, accordingly. So, yeah, if I go to a country like, let's say I'm in Singapore. Singapore right now is one of the top countries on the planet financially. Um, I can speak, they have four main languages. Um, I can learn Chinese, I can learn Arabic, and I can still speak English. If I go to Europe, it's the same thing. Let's say I spend time in England. I can learn German, I can learn French, I can learn Italian. Let's say I go to a country like Turkey. If I go to a country like Turkey, I'll probably be able to learn, Italian, Latin, Spanish, French, German, Arabic, even, and other languages of surrounding nations. So the reason why this is important is because I want to put this out there as an education purpose for people currently living in the U.S., especially African Americans who are entrepreneurs, African Americans who were raised on just English. English is not um, our natural tongue. And when I was in school, teachers taught me that uh, black people can adapt to speech a lot easier than other people. I don't know how true that is, but what I do know is that there are people out there that are very young, much younger than me, half my age, about 12, and they speak between 5 and 12 languages. So it is very possible to teach yourself to learn these languages. I myself have bought a book on Chinese, beginners learning for Chinese, German, Hebrew, and let's see, Chinese, German, Hebrew. I think I might just have those three for now. But I also wanted to learn Arabic. If I know those, then I can pretty much go almost anywhere in the world and communicate with people. I can go all throughout North Africa and the Middle East if I speak Arabic, Indonesia, Malaysia. If I know Chinese, I can communicate with probably about a quarter of the world's population, because China has a population of 1.4 billion people. A good portion of them speaks Cantonese, but the majority speaks Mandarin. So Mandarin is the one that I really wanted to focus on. As for Japanese and Korean languages, I'm pretty sure both of those languages are sects of Chinese. They evolved out of the Chinese language. So if you learn Chinese, you can learn Korean and Japanese as well. I would recommend learning Chinese first because, again, those two, I'm pretty sure, came out of the Chinese language, just as English came out of the German language mixed with um, Latin and some of the other Romantic languages. I started studying German, and it's really easy to see the similarities between English and German. So that was very interesting to me. I haven't got started with Hebrew yet, but I'm interested in that because, like Arabic, it is a Semitic language. And I haven't explored the African languages yet, but I think it's definitely important, especially for, again, African Americans, the ones who want to get involved on the continent more. When people travel to Africa, yes, it's okay for Africans to speak in English, but it may be better for African Americans to learn the languages over there. Now, some Africans, majority of them are Christian, but some are Muslim. So that means that they will speak some Arabic down there. That's um, more so towards North Africa than it is towards the sub-Saharan part. Um, so Arabic is a dialect down there. English is a dialect. The European languages are a dialect, but they are colonial languages. It's important to really get to the root and understand that just because you learned things a certain way in school, um, other schools teach things differently, and there's a wide variety of other knowledge bases out there that we as African Americans are not used to. So I'm putting this content out there to be aware and say that it's important to be able to communicate with the people around you, regardless of where you are. I think it's time for people to take the limits off of themselves as it pertains to the U.S. and really start branching out and communicating with people abroad how they feel about things, you know, especially when as it pertains to um, business, politics, natural resources, finance, things of that nature. Because if you don't, then you remain stuck in a box. And the last thing people want is to be stuck in a box, especially when they feel like the walls are closing in, as many people do here in 2020. Anyway, So that's my rant on language. Um, I'll put some links up to some books on beginners learning for some languages. Let me know what you guys think on this. Drop a like, subscribe, comment. Enjoy the rest of the content.